In learning institutions, textbooks are the go-to source to teach a history. Now, I'm a history geek, but seriously, some of those books are just so dry. Great for putting you to sleep, horrible for grabbing your attention. But wouldn't you remember something better if it was actually interesting and exciting? This episode, I talk with Onrie Kompan about how he's drawing on a different medium to tell history.
My name is Onrie Kompan. I'm the writer, creator, and producer of the Yi Sun-shin trilogy. The series is about a Korean admiral that battled the Japanese in the 1500s. He was outnumbered 10-1 against the Japanese, and he beat them 23 times in a row without losing.
Wow.
It's all based on a true story, too. Now, because people have that mentality that this is history, and they think that when they pick up this book, it's going to be like a history lesson that's beat over their head. This is so not the case with our book. Now, our battles are 100% accurate, but our goal is to entertain our audience. So we have a story in place. What actually happened is not far off from what we've done here. Everything that happened is grounded in reality in our book, but we did take some liberties to make the story more interesting because people want to be entertained.
And what kind of liberties? Was it just like dialogue and story, or was there anything added that was not realistic?
Primarily with the dialogue, we wanted to take more of a modern tone with our book because I think people can get lost really easily when you have like thick text of how people talked back then. Because the truth is that we didn't exist 400 years ago. We don't know how people talked back then.
Right.
We can assume that they spoke more eloquently than we do today, or we can just enjoy ourselves a little bit more when we're reading comics, right?
Updating the language is not the only adjustment you can make to a historical tale. Take Mouse. Written by Art Spiegelman, this nonfiction graphic novel tells the story of how his father, a Jewish person living in Nazi-occupied Poland, survived the Holocaust. When you pick it up, the first thing you notice is that all the people have been replaced by animals. This technique not only drew praise, but in some cases, massive criticism. Still, the book is not only taught in many schools, it's the first ever graphic novel to win a Pulitzer Prize.
I think that the biggest challenge that the comic book industry has faced ever since its inception is the fact that it is grounded in superheroes and kid stuff. And although the kid audience is really important because it kind of builds the foundation of future readers, we also have to keep in mind that there are people that eventually grow up and they shouldn't have to quit reading comics. It's like you don't stop watching movies because you reach a certain age. You don't stop reading books once you reach a certain age. Why should you stop reading comics? That's what we're here for. We're to keep people who are already over the superheroes, over the kid stuff, to keep coming back and reading comics.
When most people think of comics, they think of fictional superheroes. But throughout the life of comics, biographies were actually quite prevalent. There were biographical comics about sports figures and about military officers. Dell Comics even used to publish biographies about the lives of politicians. Are you working on any other historical comics?
Absolutely. I'm actually working on a book right now about my grandfather's life. He was a Russian-Jewish soldier during World War II, and he actually shot down Nazi airplanes. So I'm putting together a graphic novel about his life. He passed away a couple years ago, and this is sort of like my tribute to him.
If you can tell history through people, through individual stories, at least that draws me in more. I know that I feel like I can identify more when I see a personal story as opposed to the overall big picture.
Well, absolutely, because the people that existed in history are people that you have more in common with than, say, superheroes that don't actually exist. These are the stories I aim to tell are about extraordinary people that have actually existed in history and in many ways inspired the heroes that we read about in comics. Primarily with Yushin Shin, what I was looking for was an edge and find a story about a real-life superhero, and he truly was. I mean, he was outnumbered 10-1 against the Japanese, and he beat them 23 times in a row without losing. And this actually happened. It's not something I made up. This actually happened.
That's a true underdog story.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I told you that an animated satire show exposed you to history, would you believe me? What about a show like Archer? Next episode, I might just change your mind. See you then.